Count money, man. Stack riches. Try and told him I'm a beast blood.
What's up, gang? Welcome back to another episode of the GRINDcast. Get ready. It's a new day, and today we have Globe Senior Vice President of Recruiting and my man, my friend, Mr. Bo Gentile in the house.
Thank you,
Welcome
Simon.
to the GRINDcast, sir.
Thank you, sir. I've waited a long time to get on the couch. It's like being, you see the late show and this type of stuff. Well, in our industry, it's getting on the grind couch, and I just really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to visit with you and spend some time with you and your agency this week.
I know we, I speak on behalf of the whole organization when we say that we really appreciate you taking time away from your family and other folks in the company that you serve to come spend a couple days, with us, you and Phil and Mike, and we're all grateful to have you. So let's get started. We're going to get a bunch of juice, bunch of nuggets that'll help people not only in our business but out of our business also. So, Bo, you've been with the company, I think 23 years ish,
exactly
total,
Yep.
Mostly corporate.
Yeah, majority corporate, and then 5 years in the field, a stint with the Altig organization, and then a stint with Tom Williams and David Zoffin, who's our president. I was their RGA for 3 years in 2011 to 13.
So it's a great, unique connection. It's not always with folks in corporate in what we do in the agency field force side. Do you have somebody that has transcended and kind of been in both shoes,
Right,
so to speak,
right.
gives you a little bit more understanding of what's going on both sides. And that is shown in the ability for you to help and serve others. And
Thank you.
And that's probably why you've went from, helping folks at American Income, helping folks at Liberty, to helping people at Family Heritage, and now basically heading up the recruiting situation for all of Globe, which many of you know is our parent company. Mm-hmm. And so why don't we start out with you telling us a little bit about your just upbringing?
Yeah, raised in a little town in Edmond, Oklahoma. Went to high school there, went to college in the state of Oklahoma, and then, grew up. What was unique was growing up, my father was a professional athlete. He played 19 years in the major leagues. And so I grew up in
an experience.
Yeah, it was. He was already done. My older brothers and sisters got the fun of being in a Raisin brand cereal commercial and doing those things. They grew up with it. He was already done when I was born, but that's what brought into me the work ethic and the competitiveness, if there's a word for that. He before it was popular and all this stuff, he just was always like, take pride in the name on the front of the jersey. The name on the back of the jersey matters, but the front's what matters more. You're always part of the team first and individual second. And so it just kind of transcended through sports as I played sports, as I got into business. And then when I got into business, what was really unique, especially with the AIL experience, was there was this team. There were 40 agency owners at the time. And it was like, I'm a part of this team. And so it was that name on the front, not so much my results that I could get. You took more pride in taking care of the others. And so kind of a phrase that we kind of use is, my mission was their success. My mission was to provide them with whatever they needed to get there. And that instilled very young with my dad, trying to help us out. And with my mom, what do you need in order to succeed? And understanding the process has to be right for the result.
Yeah.
To be right.
Yep.
Too many people just jump. I always like when I'm training my guys now, I talk about it. Too many guys go to the last line on the spreadsheet. What
Right.
I like to do, and it drives them crazy, I cover the names, I cover the results, I inspect the process. Those are the people that you need to work on. Then look at the name and look at the result, because a lot of us will look at the process differently based on the name. But if the name's covered, the process is the process. Now look at the name and then decide how you're going to work with that person. I think that started real young with my dad and those types of things.
One of the things that I was hearing you talk about was your son, who's also a good athlete. Mm-hmm. And I think he's playing football. He's done hockey.
Yeah.
I've watched him through you, grow up. And I've watched him get bigger and bigger. I remember you sending me the pictures, and I'm like, man, this kid's big. He's young. He's my size. It ain't too big, but as a young kid, he's like, man, I could tell he's already my size. Now I see the pictures, and he's like your size. You know what I mean? And freshman in high school, and we were talking, and you're like, hey, I told the coach, you don't have to worry about me because they got him playing varsity already. And you went to the coach and said, hey, you don't have to worry about me. Where if you got to be hard on them, be hard on them.
Yeah, let coaches coach. And sometimes we have a tendency not to do that in society. Is we have a tendency to, we have our opinion, and as long as the coach goes along with it, we're in a good place. Where I wanted him to know, I need you to feel like the reins are off. Be free. In other words, if you need to have tough love, you can have tough love. Granted, within boundaries, but when I played, for a coach to grab your face mask, that was to get your attention.
Normal.
It wasn't out of line.
Yep.
Nowadays, I understand it might be considered a little aggressive, but I want whatever the coach felt he needed to do to get my son's attention. I was letting him know, you're not looking over your shoulder. It's very hard to go forward when you're looking backwards. And
Amen.
when you're looking over your shoulder, worrying about different things versus what you know is right, the ethics are right, the priority is right when you're coaching and what you're doing, that's how people learn, and that's how people go forward.
I quote sometimes John Maxwell, where he says that leadership is disappointing people at a rate that they can stand. Mm-hmm. And I think if you want to be able to move at an expedited pace, I have to be able to disappoint you at an mm-hmm. expedited pace. And part of the game now in society, especially with kids, is I have to be hard on you at a pace that not only you could handle, but that your parents can handle. So I would imagine, the only reason why you would do that, I know for me as a parent, one of the more difficult things it is for me to do, sometimes I have to go discipline my children mm-hmm. and say, get over there or do that, or I don't want to hear it. When I walk away, I'm thinking like, man, that was not easy. Mm-hmm. It hurt me just as much as it hurt them, but I know I'm doing that, for their own benefit. And not a lot of, I think that transfers over into business. People get grown as adults and they no longer are willing to have that same, they understand why if they were the coach, that would be good for the kids. But when they become the coach, they don't really like to take the same coaching from whoever's coaching them as much. And I believe that's what stunts the process, is they're unwilling to be still a form of a child in them in order to continue to grow. And I think that was huge when I heard you say that about the coach. What was it like, or what did it take for somebody like you to earn your way to, running the recruiting for all of Globe Life, which is a huge company, that whole path, what was that like? What's the cool stuff, and all that. Well, but what were some of the what did that require?
Well, I think a lot of it was, I had a great mentor when I first came in, which was Roger Smith. And I was fortunate we were small enough. When I came in, there were only 5 people at the corporate office at American Income. So once a week, me and Roger would actually, and this is where I was going to say, first it was, I had the right people that cared about me. The right people that cared about me and wanting to see my success. Roger every week would make a trip up to go see the CEO at the time of Torchmark for us to kind of meet. Roger was new in his position. He'd only been there a year. He brings me in to be his director of recruiting. That 2-hour drive to McKinney up and back every week, pouring into just me, it was the most anyone in the business world had ever cared about me. And at the time, I didn't understand it. Sometimes I was like, oh my gosh, here we go, 2 hours. And I went at it like, I got to have the right answers. Instead of understanding, I needed to ask the right questions. See, too many people, when they're working with the person who's what you would say, they're here, you're, above them, they think they have to have the right answers. And what they're missing is that was 2 hours. I would love to go back now.
You could go pick his brain.
Oh my gosh, if I could pick his brain for 4 hours a week, I'd do it now. And I'm hoping I'm not bothering him when he's at home on vacation. You know what I'm saying? Because I missed that opportunity. I went into that meetings wanting to have the answers for him versus trying to get the questions to be better. So that was really good. Once I understood that people cared, then it was kind of, I got to be honest with you, a lot of it was the people. A lot of it was the people and not wanting to let them down. I talk a lot about what I see as the most successful people in all of business, even in any business, is those people that have the ability to create emotional loyalty. Now, hear me when I say emotional loyalty. I didn't say romantic. I said emotional, in that they don't want to let somebody down. Not wanting to let somebody down is more important than going after the right result.
100%.
And that's what I learned, where I didn't want to let the agency owners down. I didn't want to let the SGAs down. I didn't want to let you, heck, when I first met you, I think it was like 2003 or 4, you came into Waco down in the basement where we did our leadership class.
Old school leadership schools.
And the first thing I did was, when I met you, I was like, okay, this is going to be a key player. You could tell within an hour, it's going to be a key player. It was, how do I challenge you? You want my AIL cufflinks? Okay, do this. 6 months later, I was sending you my cufflinks because you accomplished what was there. And that was part of it. It was like watching other people grow. But really what kind of did it was just learning that people are people. And if you can understand what it is that they want to accomplish and you can help them accomplish what they want, The satisfaction alone is enough, but more times than not, especially in our business, but just in life, everybody wins. People always want to talk about there has to be winners and losers. I don't believe that. I think at times in sports, maybe, but in business, everyone can win. Everyone can win. And that's the best part about what we have, where we, in our business or most businesses, someone doesn't get something and someone else lose it. We just make the pie bigger.
Right.
And that's the part I like. So as I went along, I started to realize that. And then, I 7 years in the business, I realized, and Roger had a conversation with me. He was like, Bo, you're really seen as an administrator. And until you actually and he used an analogy because it's a small, go regressing a little bit. When I first interviewed with Roger, I think one of the only reasons I probably got the job was his wife at the time, Dottie, had babysat for my older brothers and sisters when my dad played baseball in Baltimore. Small world, right?
Yeah.
I'm interviewing with Roger Smith, and here's this. So Roger used the analogy of a baseball card. He's like, Bo, the front of the card looks great, but the front of everybody's baseball card looks great. There's no separation between Ken Griffey's baseball card and yours on the front. But when I turn them over, one of them's going to Hall of Fame and one of them doesn't have any stats. So he's the one who kind of nudged me almost in a way to say, you've got to go into the field. You've got to get, for lack of a better term, street cred. You got to get experience with our people so they trust when you're asking them to do something in the field. They trust your reports. They trust the analytics of it. Now trust the personal behavior part of it. And so went into the field and, when I spent those 3 years with Tom and Dave and a couple of years with AO, that's where now all of a sudden I did have that baseball card. But more than anything, I understood what it meant to be in business. Sometimes when you're behind the desk, you're not in business. You're an employee mindset. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And once I kind of merged the two together, that's where I felt like things took off because I could have empathy for when an agent or an SGA or an agency owner would tell me one thing or anyone would tell me something. But at the same time, I understood what still needed to be accomplished from the corporate goal.
Right.
Make sense?
Right.
And kind of where you talked about discussions, it also allowed me to be better at having those conversations. We've all heard the quote, you're really not moving the needle if half your conversations with people don't make you as uncomfortable having them as they are going to be hearing them. Mm-hmm. You're taking the easy way out. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. It taught me how to have those in a manner that showed them that I cared versus it was, hey, I need you to do this so we look better on a report.
Speaking of, taking the easy way out, what, you have to imagine on a journey, 20-year plus journey, you'd have to have some obstacles or hurdles, along the way. Any hurdles jump out to you? Any obstacles that you've had to persevere through that stand out?
Yeah. And I'll be just really sincere, when I first came back from working with Tom and Dave, Roger was the CEO and everything was good. And I knew Roger was going to retire. And I had a real big maturity lesson that I had to learn.
This is coming back to corporate.
Coming back to corporate.
From working with, and those of you that aren't familiar with the company, Tom and Dave, those are two great people that were at the time in South Florida.
Right, correct.
Which is where you were working.
Correct.
In the agency field force, transitioning into corporate.
Yeah, Roger, again, like we talked about, Roger kind of had, along the way, moved things. And then, he just basically was like, hey, would you like to come back to corporate? Okay. But he told me ahead of time, hey, it looks like I may be retiring and there's going to be a new CEO that comes in. And I knew the CEO, Steve Greer. We go back. At one point, I was even his director. We worked together. But I didn't handle the transition right. I didn't handle and I call it the transition. You've got to be able to adjust to different processes and different things in business. You've got to be able to understand that things are going to change. You may be playing for this coach and now you're playing for this coach. And I don't know that I adjusted as strongly as I could. And I that's the one hurdle that I wish, if I could go back, if there's one thing I wish I could go back, it would be, I would have sat down, and I already said it earlier, I would have sat down with Steve Greer and asked more questions. I made more statements. I tried to keep things the way they were, and I wish that I would have. Now, we have a great relationship, but I know this is a mistake I made, is I didn't try to ask questions from the same thing I didn't do with Roger. In the beginning, I had a chance to correct that with Steve, and I look back and go, that's a 2-year window I wish I could have back of communicating with Steve, because I would have asked a lot more questions. And who knows? I mean, I've gotten those answers now, but it was a 2-year curve on that for sure.
So there's some nuggets that people can pull of, spend time before you're transitioning into something or spending time with somebody that may be a coach or somebody that you have to work closely with. Spend time on the questions. Give thoughts of the questions that you want to ask when you're with that person. I know for me, it's maybe a different gear, but whenever I have an opportunity to mentor, people in business, the thing that separates me wanting to continue spending time with somebody is how prepared they are, when they show up. And I try to do the same thing when a mentor gives me time. I still try to find mentors and have mentors in my life, at 40 and 18 years in the game. And I think the way that I've tried to separate myself, I'd have to hear from that person's standpoint of why, you would continue that relationship with me for a decade when so many people want your time, is that I try to come in prepared with not only what I've done that I've implemented so you could realize that you're not wasting your words and wasting your time, but that I'm coming prepared every time with questions that are well thought out, that show that I respect the opportunity and respect your time, but to also keep it to where you don't have any heavy lifting. I'm not showing up and expecting you to do more work. You're already doing me a service by allowing me to pick your brain and pick your knowledge. What are some standout characteristics that you would say of people that succeed in business in our business in general? Maybe just people that are just starting out. We could start out with, and then maybe you've traveled the country and spent time with some of the greatest leaders, the greatest leaders in the company, which is, in my opinion, some of the greatest leaders in business, in business, period, in the United States of America. So maybe can you point out some things that stand out of who makes it, in the business? What are some of the characteristics that you see of the people that, these are some things that they do that of the people that make it? And then at the higher levels of leadership, what things stick out about the greatest leaders that you've been around?
That's a great question. And my first response back on that is most of them have a vision that is just so much greater than Friday's paycheck. Their vision, I like to relate in our business that, and I'll use our business, that's kind of how you answered the question, that the agent's in the day, the SA's in the week, the GA's in the month, the MJ's in the quarter, and the SJ's in the year. And if that's their mindset, that's typically when they'll be successful. And if you find yourself having to do the shorter, like if the SJ's in the year, they're probably, it's not a good spot. If the MJ's in the week, in the week, it's not a good spot. So what I find is the people that stay, I hate to use the term stay in their lane, but they don't allow themselves to get dragged down to think smaller than where they are. They empower their people to do that. In other words, you have a great crew. We just did your leadership school. There's 20 people on there that make sure that you're in the month. Then below those 20, there's another 20 that make sure the week's going to be good. Then below those 20, there's another 20 that are making sure the day is going to be good. Every step along the way, it's like a redundancy, like there's a spare parachute all the way to the goal where you're trying to get. What I find is the number one characteristic of those people is that they're process-driven, not results-driven. They really, really focus on the process. They're really more about the process, and they trust it. I'll use... anytime we've implemented something new from a bonus program or a VIP program or something, there have been times where it'd been real easy to kill it, but they stuck with it. It's just like a good diet or a good training. You got to get through that 2 weeks where the scale doesn't show the result, but it's coming. Does that make sense?
Right,
and that's the characteristics of those leaders where they don't. What's the word I'm looking for? They don't switch on a dime. You know what I'm saying? They're not magic bullet. They understand it's the process. It takes
consistent
time.
To the long-term process.
Exactly. There's no short-term game for long-term sacrifice type of stuff. But when I look at it, the most successful ones just have a big vision, but they don't ever try to sell the vision of short of the amount of effort it's going to take. That's the real thing I see, is that they understand the amount of effort it's going to take, and they surround themselves with people that want to put in that amount of effort, and then the result happens. But I rarely in most really big successful agencies, yours and the other ones that I'm around nationwide, even when I'm with Family Heritage or I'm with Liberty, the bigger agencies normally don't talk about a dollar goal or a weekly goal. They talk about an activity. They talk about a process to get there. That's the strength of the leader, where the minute you say a goal, now you've put a limit, and now people think 75% of that's good. hey, we really want you to have an A+, so I got an A-. I still did good, right? Mm-hmm. But once you say, guys, we're going to do what we need to do. This is how we're going to do it. We focus on the activity. That's where I'm seeing those are the stronger, those are the characteristics that I see, that they don't put a lid. They don't start their conversation with a lid. They start their conversation with, we can go anywhere we want. This is just what it's going to take to get there. And they surround themselves with people like that.
Love it. How about the newer agents? People that, are in that first 6 months, range that you see, and I know we've all been around, man, we think she's going to do great. Mm-hmm. She don't make it.
Right.
We don't know if she's going to be that good. She ends up being a star.
It's always the opposite, right?
But the characteristics of the people that do make it, I tell people in the leadership, when we get into the turnover conversation of the higher you go in leadership, the less you have to deal with turnover. If I'm an SGA and I'm dealing with MGAs and RGAs, the retention rate of those people is 90% plus, right? Mm-hmm. If I'm a RGA and I'm dealing with MGAs and GAs, the retention rate of that is going to be, 75% plus. And,
right on.
If I'm a GA and I'm dealing with mostly, field trainers, the retention rate of that is going to be 50% plus. And so the only place that the turnover rate becomes an issue is that the first agent, the sales agent, that is getting off the ground before they get, promoted. The new people that are in that first 6 month range, if I had to blindfold you and you couldn't see the person, you didn't, but I said, all right, here's the traits of some of them. You could pick if they have these traits, they get to be on your team. What traits would you look for?
To be honest, I'm going to ask them to tell me their story, and the ones that have the most difficult story are the ones that I want.
Okay. So people that have overcome some obstacles.
100%. Because we're a great recruiting organization. We will get a lot of people that want a piece of what we've got, but they're not good at overcoming obstacles, so they give up on their dream. But those people that have overcome the obstacles will not let go of this dream. They will see this, and our people will help pull them up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we can't pull somebody up who doesn't put their hand up. If you're not reaching out, I can't grab you. And so for me, I would just be like, okay, tell me your story. A lot of times I used to, right, wrong, or indifferent, I would sometimes ask the question, tell me about yourself. And just what they would tell me, but the more times there was like I got down, I got back up, I got down, I got back up. That's who I wanted, because what I know in our business, we have a start date and a commit date. There's a date everybody starts, and those that stick commit. And normally that date's somewhere in their first 90 days. And that's because their leader got emotionally connected to them. And when I say loyal, I mean they changed something. Please don't misunderstand. I mean, they changed something from the standpoint of, wow, my income changed. Wow, my lifestyle changed. Wow, just the leadership you're providing changed. That type of deal. They got connected.
Right.
And once they got connected, that's the ones that stay. But I just want you to tell me your story. And the ones that have overcome obstacles, because this career will have obstacles. Any business will have obstacles. Anything in life will have obstacles. Sometimes by the time they get here, I sometimes will laugh. The person with their first job sometimes doesn't do as good as we're the person with their third job, because the one with their third already knows the first two. The corner office didn't
appreciate
get
it.
Well, it's you'll hear it said all the time. Give me the person who's already been on 2 jobs that graduated college, because the job with the assistant, the corporate jet, and the corner office wasn't there. The second job where they went to wasn't there. Now they're willing to put in the grind, as we say, to get what they need to be.
Right.
Reality is kind of, they're no longer in this idealistic world. Now they're getting a little realistic, and they realize hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Right.
And it's time to work hard, and that's what I'm listening for and looking for.
I remember back in the day, we had, because you've been, the guy to talk to about recruiting for a long time. I remember we had a poster, and I may be dating myself a little bit. I still think I'm youthful, but
right.
I'm old enough to love Bo Jackson.
Right on.
Who played baseball at a high level and football at a high level and was a ridiculous athlete.
Yep.
And we had a poster that said Bo knows recruiting.
Yep.
When we were promoting stuff about, you doing a call and all that stuff.
Yep.
And so I know Bo knows recruiting. That's what you've been zoned in on, for 2 decades and spent time with, like we mentioned, some of the greatest leaders in the country. What do you think that it takes as a leader? Because just like sports, I think business is similar in sports in many ways, but one of them is typically, regardless of how good of a coach you are, if I got the best roster, if I got the best talent, a lot of times I'm going to win.
Right.
You know what I mean? If I got the
sir.
talent.
Yep.
So you're in a talent acquisition business.
Right.
As a martial artist, I would say you're a black belt in talent acquisition.
I appreciate that.
So what would you say it takes for leaders to be able to acquire top talent? What things would you say that it would require for, if I'm a leader in any industry, here's how you start to attract some top talent?
Well, I think a lot of that starts with you have to use multiple channels in order to do that. I think too many people in this day and age right now are getting social media happy. Too much is just social media. Does that make sense? Believe it or not, what's old is new again. And so what I like to say is you've got to have a multi-channel approach. Social media, you've got to use it. You've got to do some personal recruiting, just who you are. But I like to say you have an ownership mentality.
So you think social media helps?
Oh, social media helps for sure, without a doubt, or we wouldn't be sitting here, right? And your podcasts and things. Social media is a benefit. But I look at social media, and this is where, it's just a different take, is social media is the validation of what I'm going to tell you happens. Does that make sense?
Yep.
In other words, I'm not going to utilize social media to post an ad or to do things. I'm going to use social media to validate that what's possible within my organization. This is what we do. This is how we share in our lives. This is how we celebrate. This is how we work. You're going to be able to get what I call the culture of the agency or the culture of the company by going to social media. Not read a one ad on social media. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That should be social media to me is that dangling carrot of, man, I want to be a part of that. That looks fun. That looks exciting. Wow, look at that environment. And have a little bit of everything. There's going to be a little bit of the material things. There's going to be a little bit of the emotional things, a little bit of culture, but it can't just be one. But I think social media is very important. I think personal recruiting comes into play. And what do I mean by that? I think your successful recruiters in any business are always open for business. And what I mean by that, they have an ownership mentality, which means they're always listening, not listening because they're going to recruit everyone, but even a top recruiter at a corporate organization. Let's pull out the best banking firm in the world. Their top recruiter, even when they're not working, watches traits of people, listens to what people are saying, and will go up and present themselves, because right now with where the market is for recruiting, the only people not working are typically those that don't want to right now. So your top talent, you've got to recruit. We're not able to hire. See, we went through a phase during the pandemic where we could hire. Now we got to get back to recruiting. And recruiting is just like the player who said, I'm never going to go play at Alabama because I live in California and I like the sun and the weather. But once they feel the sun on the grass at Alabama Stadium, once they see what's going on, or heck, I know you're O State, I'm Oklahoma. I mean, that's recruiting. Who wants to go to Oklahoma to play football? Think about it. National powerhouse all the time. I use them as an example. If I asked anyone in your room, I'll go find your 50 top managers. You want to move to Oklahoma? Some might even ask, where is it?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But we can recruit there because when they get on campus, it's the culture, it's the environment. That's what social media and the face-to-face interaction works. But the next big thing with the recruiting is I go back into it's multi-channel. Too many people are just going one channel, and you've got the person that's going to, for lack of a better term, win in recruiting is going to have multiple, for lack of better terms, activity streams of recruiting. They're going to do social. They're going to do personal. They're going to do on-campus or face-to-face college type of recruiting where they can meet people. They're going to utilize the job boards, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, the monsters, the career builders of the world, the job boards. But they're going to have all of these going. So if one stops, the other four still keep it going. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Multiple streams.
Correct. But most importantly is they are open to there's always a criteria. With us, you have to get a license. With some places, you need a degree, those types of things. But ultimately, they haven't raised this bar to where that person that's hungry doesn't get the opportunity.
Yep.
I talked about it today on your call. Let's make sure we're not making it more difficult to become a part of this organization than it was when you joined.
Yes.
That door needs to be just as open as it was for these people now as it was for you.
I think, when it comes to recruiting, you could look at it as, leadership, a lot of it could be based off of your relationships. Recruiting starts to become about networking and relationships. A lot of not all, but if I could just speak for myself, when I look at my journey, not everybody, but a lot of the people that have had the most success were people that were personally attracted by others. But I could just speak for myself that the people that I've coached, over the long haul, a lot of the people that had the most success were people that I personally recruited into the organization. I would say half of the people I never knew before. Some of the people I knew before, but a lot of the people I never knew before. How do you think people could set a foundation for having a good relationship while you're at the same time networking to try to
So when you say a good relationship,
talent?
You mean like personal recruiting relationship and at the same time do the outside? Well, you were living proof of that because in 2011, I came to visit you. Remember? It was like, hey, we were an established agency in Florida. You were brand new up here and you were handing us our tail. Literally, you were handing us our tail, and it's like, I left corporate, I'm doing this. I'm like, wait, what's going on? And I came up here just to see what you were doing in personal recruiting, and what I realized was you were just doing it. You were actively out there seeing people. You owned the business. You understood that the art of recruiting is people, and you understood how to communicate with people and attract people. But at the same time, that's where I kind of go to that multi-channel approach. Some people, when they start having a lot of success with personal, they start to think if you're not a personal, then you're not going to be successful. Mm-hmm. And what they've really got to understand is...
I was not a personal recruit.
I know, you're an RMS.
I was a resume.
Listen, we called you. My team called you. I take credit for Simon being a part of American Income. It's just at the time, Kim Smith provided us the resume, and we called you from home office, or Marcus and them contacted you. But the real key to that is, and that's what sometimes happens with recruiting. People go to the magic bullet. Personal recruiting's really working. That's all I'm going to do. And then it's, oh, wait, Indeed's all I'm going to do. Oh, wait, this. And they just have to have that balance and that same discipline the same way they would. And that's where I always try to parallel recruiting to production. Are you ever just going to be a child safe only? Are you ever just going to do referrals?
Right.
Ever just going to do this? So mirror the two, and that's how it works.
You mentioned about Oklahoma having that winning tenure, that winning atmosphere. How important do you think it is with winning organizations to have a certain culture, that you set? You mentioned, man, who wants to move to Oklahoma till you come down there and you feel the culture?
Right. Me and you talked about it earlier. Who would have thought Oklahoma would win 3 national championships in softball back to back? When I think softball, I think UCLA, Arizona, all this. Now all of a sudden, 3 years in a row, this team out of Oklahoma has won the national title. And that's because that team has created a culture. When they come on campus, they almost create FOMO. Fear of missing out. Wait, I'm going to miss out on that? I want to be a part of that. Yeah. And that's why, to me, culture is everything. And I learned a long time ago.
The softball team?
Yeah, the softball team did that. Football hasn't won 3 in a row. I'd like to lay claim to that, but we're a long way from there. We're just trying to get back to 500 next year. So ease up on the comments about Oklahoma.
But when they were really
I
doing
know when
good,
we're getting there. Correct.
A lot of it was coming from our coach,
Stoops,
Youngstown,
out of Ohio,
baby. Shout out Bob
Ohio
Stoops. Let's
will
go.
lay claim to anything they can. I get it. I'm with you.
Especially Youngstown.
I got you.
Throw me a bone.
I'm with you, man, 100%. And his brother was there, so they were great. The big thing is, it's culture is people. See, you don't change culture because you put a banner on the wall. You don't change culture because you are wearing a suit rather than a Jordan jersey. Culture can only be changed by mindset and people. I've watched more organizations go to another level because the people that were holding it back decided to leave or change in a lot of different industries, not just ours. So and then all of a sudden it goes to a whole nother level. Heck, our CEO, Steve Greer, talks about he let his dad go. And when he let his dad go out of his organization, there was even some growth there. Because sometimes what you don't realize is it's people can be the lid to other people, but people are really the lid to that culture thing. And people want to be a part of that. I think now FOMO is greater than it's ever been. And what I mean by that is fear of missing out is people show up, and not for nothing, but we used to do it in Florida. This was way back, but you put the nicer cars in the front. You do this, you dress up. People are like, wait a minute. That's kind of cool. That's kind of nice. And then other people might see all the donations you make with Inspiring Minds and the different things that the organizations do with Make Tomorrow Better and stuff. And who knows what people want to do now to pay it forward. Make sense?
Yep.
But if they can be a part of something that does pay it forward, if they can be a part of something that gives them that opportunity for growth,
right,
that fear of missing out is what brings them in. And that's the art of recruiting. Yeah, that's the art of recruiting. And that's why I think what you do with your GRINDcast and what other organizations do, all of them do, with their trying to just inform people and educate people. You do this, and more people that have never walked in your door watch it than walk in your door. If you were only doing this for the people here, then okay, great. We can just do it on a Zoom.
Right.
The fact is, there are more people that get more out of this that don't come into your organization.
Right.
That's paying it forward.
Yep.
But that's also that 1% that comes in, they want a piece of it.
Right.
They want a part of it. And the energy. And, me, Phil, and Mike were talking about it last night. I mean, just all of us going to Top Golf and the energy that was at Top Golf and the camaraderie and the passion. And even then, because it was a contest, there was that fear of missing out. What have I got to do to get to that contest?
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
I mean,
I got fear of missing out when I watch you flying around the racetrack, because anytime I hit my foot on the gas pedal, Natalie hollers at me because I ended up with a speeding ticket. So I haven't had one in a really long time. Knock on wood. Okay, knock on wood. But I don't know a ton about racing, but I know you're into cars, and and I know you've hit the racetracks and and stuff like that before. How did you get into is it drag racing?
Yeah, it's drag racing. Really, what it is when I was in Florida, the opportunity afforded me the ability to. I was always in 4-door sedans. And my son got to be about 3, and that's when I knew I was in trouble. He was like, "Dad, your car is boring." And we literally just one Sunday went and looked at cars, and I said, "What about this one?" "Dad, he's 3, right? I love it. This is great. Ooh, cool." Matched his Matchbox car. And I got my first Dodge Challenger. And from there, it's just, I joke, there's a meme out there that talks about having one type of habit was expensive, but being with cars has gotten more expensive. This is a very expensive hobby. It's a very expensive habit that my son got me into. It started with a 99-cent Matchbox car, and now we got a $500,000 race team that we go and race.
Okay.
We've done everything.
And you race competitively?
Yeah, we raced. We went to Lights Out in April in Atlanta. Did real well there. Went to TX2K, which is the largest kind of street car race in the nation. Made it to the semifinals out of 39 cars.
That's sweet.
It's a lot of fun.
You built that car yourself?
Yeah. Well, we took
not yourself, but your hands.
Here's what it boils down to: bought the car and then upgraded it significantly. And
wow,
no, it's a lot of fun.
And you bring a team. Do you have a team? So, when you race, do you have people that like when I watch it? If somebody blows a tire out, there's like a team of people that come in and work on it.
In our case, because it's only like 8 seconds down the strip.
Okay, it's just a straight shot.
Yeah, straight shot.
Okay.
If you blow a tire, it's real. You just got to bring it back around. Typically, in most cases, if I'm going out of state, I'll take the family. But for most, like Sunday, before I came here, a lot of times I will go race to clear my mind before I'm going on a trip. To just kind of, so Sunday went down to the track by myself, pulled the trailer, unload the car, because it takes about and this is me and Phil gives me a hard time, just to unload the car and get the car ready to go down the track takes about 3 hours, and it's 8 seconds on the track. So it's 3 hours of preparation for 8 seconds.
For 8 seconds.
And I said, Phil.
So is life.
Well, but that's what we're going to relate it to. I said, Phil, the reason why I enjoy it so much is it reminds me the process is more important than if I was only doing it for the 8 seconds, guess what I wouldn't do?
Right.
But that process, it keeps me grounded in that the process is what matters. I go through my safety checks. I make sure the fire bottles are set. I make sure the parachute's set. I make sure the brakes are good. All the tire pressures are right, because it's 8 seconds at 160 plus miles an hour and anything could go wrong. It's you and 2 cement walls and a sand trap at the end, and you either stop or so the preparation is more important than the 8 seconds, because 8 seconds could be
life and death. Could be life and death.
I don't like to think that, but it could definitely go wrong.
Yeah.
So it's the preparation. Well, so is life, as you said, but so is any business. How you prepare will definitely dictate more times than not the result that you get.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I was going to end with, what would be your advice to people new in not just our business, but just new to getting into business. And it's, I don't want to answer for you, but it sounds like a lot of what you've said has been about that just process and understand the process. You only can learn the process by asking questions. I am still convinced, to this day with my staff, and even myself, I had a meeting with my superior, Friday before we came here. And my whole deal was I sent him ahead of time. Because I'll just be honest, I sent him ahead of time the questions I was going to ask, because I wanted to have him time to digest and maybe give me a better answer at the time, versus that meeting be discovery to have a discussion later. So ask questions. If you're new to something,
you cannot be afraid to ask questions. I always like to tell, I tell my team, the answer is no if you don't ask the question.
Right.
But if you ask the question, remember, everyone needs to remember in business, your leader, the owner, whoever it is, they want to say yes. They want to say yes. The only reason they say no is you probably just either the question wasn't phrased right or they're not sure that you're aware of it because you haven't asked enough questions to give them the confidence that you can handle the next question. So asking questions, being open to guidance, but seizing that opportunity and realizing that asking questions about the process will ensure you get the result you're looking for. So have an idea, don't get me wrong, have an idea where you want to finish, but you got to ask the right questions to get you there.
Yeah. When I hear asking questions, that's just being a student.
Right.
I talk sometimes about there's a difference between being coachable and then being a student.
Well,
you're coachable. It's like, I'm going to coach you. I'm going to tell you what to do. Being a student is what you're talking about.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part for most people is actually being the student. There are a ton of people, and we both know this, and me included sometimes, we say, man, I'm willing. Tell me anything. I'm willing to learn. But then, no, we're willing to hear anything, and then we're going to figure out what part we're going to implement.
Yeah.
And what we need to understand is, a puzzle isn't a complete puzzle if you leave certain pieces out. So you can't pick and choose what you're going to implement. Amen. If you ask the question and your mentor or leader or whoever gives you the answer, you don't normally get to pick what parts you want to use. You got to use them all. And most people, when they struggle, they pick which parts they are comfortable doing, and the ones they're not, they leave out, and then therefore they want to know why they never get that complete picture.
The winning is in the winning is in the parts that you want to leave out.
100%, always.
Right, that's always where the winning is done.
Always, that's the cherry on top.
If it was just about doing the things that we want to do, then we all would be doing it.
Yeah, I'd be in that chair and you'd be over here.
The separation is well, you can have this chair.
No, I'm just playing. But that is the difference,
right?
The 100%.
And doing the stuff that you don't feel like taking coaching
100%.
to do. That's where all the winning is at. Right there. When people ask me what does it take, I came in and I remember you said about the thing in Waco, and I'd love to hear what you thought, maybe if you can remember what made you thought that I would be successful. But I could tell you, I remember you giving me the opportunity to earn the cufflinks because it meant so much to me. I had those cufflinks, and I know those cufflinks because you talked about how they were real silver, and they started to, you had to polish them.
If you don't polish them, they'll turn.
I rode those suckers till the wheels fell off, man. I had those things for over a decade. You talk about sentimental, it was just in the moment back when we were in the bottom of Waco doing leadership schools. Yeah. Those cufflinks were one of the only pairs of cufflinks I ever had, in my life. My first interview off of that resume, I borrowed the suit, from my uncle, and I still have the tie, nice. That I wore to that interview. Nice. And I look at, the jokes that when I try to coach our people, and I still don't got it all down on, how to dress to impress completely, but when I try to give the young folks some tidbits on how to dress, to make sure they don't feel bad about themselves, I go back and pull up my old pictures. Yeah, exactly. When I'm like, look at me, yeah. look at what I look like, right there. That's what I started out with in the beginning, and I could just tell you when people ask me, what does it take, if I could pick, out of this stack of resumes, who's going to make it, it would be that person that is not going to give up no matter what the adversity point. It would be the person that's going to bring a work ethic and the person that is the most coachable. If you don't quit and you bring a work ethic where I'm going to outwork everybody, which is all of these things are controllables, and then I'm going to be the most coachable person. I'm going to be the best student. Those three things, I think if you can apply that to anything in life, you're going to have an astronomical amount of success. And the great thing that I found was it's all in your control. When I realized that I can, God blessed me with the ability to walk into a company by the grace of God. I put that resume online for a college class that I crammed for, that I waited until last second and didn't even really expect to take the job. I just did an interview because the teacher said I had to do an interview to pass the class and show that I did it and all that stuff. And when I realized that those steps were led, to me, and I don't want to force my beliefs on it, but when I realized I believe those steps were led by the grace of God, to this place, when I started to realize, you talk about your start date and your commit date, when I realized that people cared for me, you know, like you were talking about, when I realized the stability of the company, but when I realized that my success was going to be based on my own merit, that I was in control, it blew my mind. I never realized that people would have the ability. I thought that you were almost, you know, you had to go and this is what you were supposed to do. You know, coming from Youngstown, you just, you know, you go, you get a job, you work for 30 years, you know, you retire with a retirement, you know, at 65, and somebody tells you what to do. Never really in that process did anybody open my mind that it would be so similar to sports, that if you just put yourself on the team, you will have the same opportunity to earn a starting position, and you would be in control. That's what I realized that has changed my life and would change people's lives. If people just realize how much control that they have over their own success in all the things that you're searching for out there, the answers are already within. The answers are within our control. I want to say thank you for coming on the GRINDcast and giving us your time, Bo. 20-some years. You know, I'm coming up on 18 in December. That means, you know, we could say the majority, right? Because it's more than half. So the majority of our careers, we've been able to work on the same team with each other and work for the team on the front of the jersey.
You bet.
And I'm grateful to share that experience, you know, with you. And I appreciate you. So thank you so much for your time and all that you do.
Real quick, one thing to answer, you know why you got the cufflinks? You asked a question. You came and asked, what do I have to do to get the cufflinks? You just, your point there validates the whole thing when I talk about asking the question. You asked the question. That's why you got what you got. You got to ask questions to get where you want to go. And I just want you to know, myself, you and Natalie have blessed my family with the things that we've done together, the conventions, the talks, we've had some tough talks and we've had some good talks, but just the time with your family and my family, as well as how we've grown up together here at AIL and Globe, it's much appreciated, and your success and your continued success is all we want.
We're just getting started.
You bet.
Just getting started. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the GRINDcast. Get ready. It's a new day.